Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Prajajana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Hari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivajracharya Astakasa Shri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Maya Bodham Ki Ganga Maya Ki Jamuna Maya Ki Tulasi Deva Ki Bhakti Deva Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaura Premanande. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glorious to Sri Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Vadaya. Krishna Krishna Vishle. Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Devi. Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvasesha Sunyavadi. Kastachare Shatarine. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar. Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Jnana Timarandasya, Dhananjana Shlakaya, Chakshur Militam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam, Sapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Gadamayam, Dadati Svapadandikam, Vandeham, Sri Guru Sri Utapadakamam, Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha, Sri Rupam Sagujatam, Sahagana Raganathan Vitam Tang Sajivam, Sadvetam Savadutam, Parijana Sahitam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Sri Radha Krishna Padan, Sahagana Lalita, Sri Vishakan Vitamscha, He Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostate, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Rishabhanu Sute Devi, Banamami Haripriye, Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So welcome everybody. Nice to see you again. I'm sorry, last few weeks you may have been following us on Facebook or something, but we've not been doing many Zoom, if any, Zoom classes last few weeks for various reasons. We've been traveling. At the present moment, we're in Manchester in England, and we just came from Leicester via Lincoln. The devotees in Lincoln acquired a very large property for seminars and retreats. So we were there yesterday. And we're here in Manchester for a few days. Then we're heading off towards Newcastle, and then towards Scotland. And after that, I don't know, we'll see. We'll probably have to go back to France after that. You'll be pleased to know that now in New Mayapur, we now have, what do they call it, optic fiber. So we're hoping that the internet, some devotees are clapping. We're hoping that the internet will be steady and more accessible in future, if Krishna gives us the opportunity, future Zoom classes. As far as traveling is concerned, we're starting to travel a little bit now in Europe. We did go to Spain and Portugal for a few weeks, and now we're traveling in the UK for several weeks, Krishna willing. And after that, we'll see. But the summer in Europe is quite busy. We have many festivals, Rath Yatras, and retreats at New Mayapur, plus the obvious festivals of Balaram Purnima and Janmashtami and so on like that. So we may be a little bit tied up in France or in Europe during the summer. But at least, let's see what Krishna's plans are. We don't know. Whatever Krishna wills will happen. And we just try to direct our lives towards Krishna's will. Whatever, we try to adjust and try to be Krishna conscious according to whatever circumstance we find ourselves in. With all the various goings on in the world today, the various, let's say, misunderstandings and challenges which are faced with, we cannot guarantee anything, but we just keep trying to serve the will of the Lord wherever we are, whether we're in Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, Malaysia, Philippines, India, Europe, or America, wherever it may be, and we just try our best to connect with Krishna. So I thought today we will continue reading, although I'm not 100% sure where we left off a few weeks ago on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just give me a second. I'm going to pick up on a verse, and it would be helpful. I mean, I'm not going to ask that question today, but it would be helpful in future if you could please give me a cue as to exactly where we are in the Bhagavatam. I know we've been going through the first canto, verse by verse, and today, I don't know, perhaps we've already covered it. If we have, we're going to cover it again. I'm going to read the first canto, chapter 2, text number 13. Very beautiful section, as those who've been following know, of the Srimad Bhagavatam, most significant statements where Sutta Goswami responds to the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya, and more or less we could say in almost like sutras practically, precise statements. Sutta Goswami addresses the questions of the sages in this part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then throughout the whole Bhagavatam, these statements are expanded in various illustrative ways as well as deeper ways, so that we can imbibe the essence of these statements, of these truths, and apply them in our lives. This is a process of knowledge and execution of knowledge which leads to realization. So today we can chant this verse together, text 13, if possible. It will come up on the board. Here we have it. So please repeat after me. Atak Pumbir Dvija Shrestha Banashrama Vibhagashaha Spanustitasya Dharmasya Sangsidhir Haritoshanam. Perhaps some of you are familiar with this verse, especially the last line, Sangsidhir Haritoshanam. It's a very famous line. I'll go through it once more. Atak Pumbir Dvija Shrestha Varnashrama vibhagashaha Svanustitasya dharmasya Sangsiddhir haritoshanam Hatak pumbir dvijashreshta Varnashrama vibhagashaha Svanustitasya dharmasya Sangsiddhir haritoshanam. Let's go through the word for word. Ataha, so. Pumbihi, by the human being. Dvija Shreshta, or best among the twice born. Varna Ashrama, the institution of 4 castes and 4 orders of life. Vibhaga Shaha, by the division of. Svanustitasya, of one's own prescribed duties. Dharmasya, occupational. Samsiddhi, the highest perfection. Hari, the personality of Godhead. Doshanam, pleasing. Then we have the translation. And purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste divisions and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. So what is the perfection of life? What is the goal of life, you could say, is to please the personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada in the purport writes, human society all over the world is divided into these 4 castes and 4 orders of life. The 4 castes are the intelligent caste, the martial caste, the productive caste, and the laborer caste. These castes are classified in terms of one's work and qualification, and not by birth. Then again, there are 4 orders of life, namely the student life, the householder's life, the retired, and the devotional life. In the best interest of human society, there must be such divisions of life. Otherwise, no social institution can grow in a healthy state. And in each of every one of the above-mentioned divisions of life, the aim must be to please the supreme authority of the personality of Godhead. It's the aim of this human form of life, to please the personality of Godhead. This institutional function of human society is known as the system of Varna Ashram Dharma, which is quite natural for the civilized life. The Varna Ashram institution is constructed to enable one to realize the absolute truth. It is not for artificial domination of one division over another. When the aim of life, that is, realization of the absolute truth, is missed by too much attachment for Indriya Priti, or meaning sense gratification. As already discussed herein before, Varna Ashram is utilized by selfish men to pose an artificial predominance over the weaker section. In the Kali Yuga, or in the age of quarrel, this artificial predominance is already current, but the saner section of the people know it well, that the divisions of castes and orders of life are meant for smooth social intercourse and high thinking self-realization, and not for any other purpose. That was a very nice verse today. And there's one more paragraph. So, herein the statement of Bhagavatam is that the highest aim of life or the highest perfection of the institution of the Varna Ashrama Dharma is to cooperate jointly for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita 4:13. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. I think that's it. End of purport. Jai. We can now go back to there we are. Back to our screen. And Prabhupada quotes this verse, famous verse from the Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter. The thrust of, we can see the thrust of the purport ultimately to please Krishna, but it's by following the order or by following the direction of the Lord in many ways to be properly engaged according to one's nature. And we see this as one of the primary threads, underlying thread. We know in Bhagavad Gita, ultimately, in the 18th chapter, Krishna gives the conclusion. And the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, and understand the conclusion, is like anything we do, has a beginning, then there is something in between, and there's an end. So the conclusion is generally considered to be the end. It's not usually considered the beginning, although the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita is, in one sense, the beginning of pure devotional service. We see at the end of the Bhagavad Gita the key verse called the Paribhashya Sutra. This means the essential, the topmost essential text of or verse of the whole text, bringing the conclusion or the essence of the text into focus. A verse which more or less appears twice in the Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru. This famous verse in the both in the 9th and the 18th chapter of the Gita, where Krishna says, engage your mind always in thinking of me, worship me, offer your homage unto me, surrender unto the next verse. Of course, he says, surrender, sarvadharmam parityajya, surrender unto me, give up every other source of shelter, every other dependence that we may have. We may become dependent, for instance, on something like today's verse, the Varna ashram, the situation which we are in the material world, be it the family or whatever our ashram may be, or be it our occupational duties. We may become somewhat dependent on those shelters. We may become dependent on the shelter of a particular kind of yogic process, other than bhakti. We may become dependent on some kind of results of performance of yajna. We may become dependent upon our knowledge or the knowledge of others. We may become dependent on demigod worship. We may become dependent upon meditation on the impersonal Brahman. We may become dependent upon society in general, putting our faith in the fact that we have so many protectors, so to speak, in society. But all of these various forms of shelter are known as atmasanyasta satsvapi. They are fallible. They are not absolutely, although of course impersonal Brahman is the spiritual realm, it is not complete. It is like going into the air with no shelter, with no place to land. No, you're just there, but it is not a safe place. Or being in the ocean with no island, no place to go, no harbor, no shelter like that. So the actual shelter is the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, to be absorbed in remembering Krishna, with not just remembering him, but acting upon that remembrance of Krishna, which is surrender. Although the verse Manmana Bhava Bhakto comes first, it really infers the state of one who is surrendered to Krishna, who has no more interest in the fallible soldiers of this material world. All these other shelters are called fallible, which means they are not permanent. One can fall from that situation. Fallible soldiers in the Bhagavatam, this is verse is described, Deha Patyaka Tradishu Atmasanyasva Satsvapi, although sufficiently experienced in this world, seeing how everything around us is fallible, we still take shelter of various fallible persons, objects, etc., or processes. So the teaching of Bhagavatam, the teaching of Bhagavad-Gita leads us up to this infallible shelter. And that infallible shelter means that one is life. We have mistaken shelter as samasata ye padapalava plavam mahatpadam punya shomarare. Bhavambadir vatsa param param padam param param yadvibadam natesham. In the 10th canto, this verse is there in the prayers of Lord Brahma, how this material world is a dangerous place at every step, and who can deny that? We were on Sankirtan yesterday, and it was noticeable how so many people I spoke to, and I didn't speak to that many, but I tried a little bit to distribute a few books, and so many of those people were very much conscious, and some were very, I would say, maybe afraid, maybe very, very concerned at least about the situation, for instance, in Eastern Europe right now, and the possibility of further repercussions from that event there, unfortunate or whatever it may be. But as people are starting to become again afraid, this material world is a fearful place. At every step, there is danger. Only those who take the infallible shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord are not affected or can cross over this dangerous ocean of Kali. Other verses describe it. This age of Kali is very, very dangerous, but the material world in general is very, very dangerous. But one who takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, this whole material creation becomes reduced to like the water in a calf's hoof print, and one can easily cross beyond it. So Krishna has given a system to enable those who are intelligent, those who are fortunate, a system to assist in our crossing over this dangerous ocean of material existence. Or we could say a system to help us to come out of the jungle or of illusion. This material world is like a jungle of illusion. We cannot see where we're going. We cannot see where we came from. And we don't know what the results of what we're doing will be. There are many dangerous animals in that jungle also, who can cause so many problems, you could say, or apparent problems to the conditioned souls. So the process of getting out of that darkness, ignorance, or the jungle, this material world, or whatever you wish to describe it as, out of illusion, is the process given herein in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in the Bhagavad-Gita, leading up, we could say, to that safe place, that we will no longer be subjected to the control of the three modes of nature. So I'm going to read a little bit now from Bhagavad-Gita, you could say our most essential scripture, especially for those of us who still have material attachments, who still have material duties, who still have some misconceptions, etc. So anarthas in the heart, and still suffering the pangs of material existence. The teaching of Bhagavad-Gita and the application of those teachings is absolutely imperative in our lives, which application may be varied. Sometimes we jump over, sometimes we may not be so mature, and we try to take up our devotional service at the conclusion. But normally we have to go through the course in order to come to the conclusion, to the end. And of course, then we go to higher studies, as Prabhupada sometimes considers the Bhagavad-Gita like studying a degree, and the Bhagavatam is like a master's degree, above the ordinary degree. And then Chaitanya Charitamrita is like a PhD, specific study of the subject matter in practical sense. So I'm going to go to the Bhagavad-Gita now. If you want to, you might be able to follow it. I don't know if I can. Let's see, Prabhupada quotes the chapter 4, the text number 13. Okay, we'll go there first. And if you wish, you can follow. Bhagavad-Gita, text 13. Chaturvanyam maya shrishtam gunakama vibhagashaha tasya kartaram apimam vidyakartaram avyayam. Very famous verse, this one. According to the three modes and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And yet, and although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. Krishna is above these three modes. He's above this system. He gives the system, looks like a teacher may be giving some guidelines to the student, but the teacher is not actually themselves. The teacher is not actually themselves the learner. They're not actually going through the, let's say, the test as such. They're above it, but they're giving that opportunity for those students to progress towards the conclusion of their education. It's understood that the teacher has already reached that point and beyond. So Krishna is the creator of this system. What is that system here? And it's the system is called the four divisions. It's called the Varna Ashrama, Chatur Varnyam, the four occupations. It could be extended to the four ashrams also, but that's kind of another subject in a sense. But the four Varnas means the four occupations, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And the essential point of today's verse in the Bhagavatam is that whatever we're situated, Kali Yuga is a very difficult age, and it's pretty hard to sometimes ascertain what one's position is in the Varna ashram. Maybe the ashrams is a little bit, for some at least, pretty obvious, because in Kali Yuga, pretty much there's only one ashram, and that ashram is Grihastha. Even that people have a hard time to follow. Why only one ashram? Because Kalo Shudra Sambhava, that in Kali Yuga, pretty much everyone is a Shudra or less even. And for Shudras in Vedic society, there is only one ashram, Grihastha. There is no Brahmachari, Vanaprastha, or Sannyas. It may be there, we could say, in some form or another. Some persons may be a little eligible in some ways. Sometimes there are some very nice Brahmachari ashrams in India, I've seen, training young children. And there are certainly some Vanaprasthas and sannyasis, but the general principle is in Kali Yuga, the only ashram is Grihastha. Okay, never mind. Whatever situation we're in, as far as the ashram goes. As far as the Varna goes, as far as our occupational activities are concerned, it is a little complicated in the Kali Yuga to ascertain one's position, most suitable position, because it is easier. When one's comfortably situated, it's a lot easier to get on with one's higher purposes in life, or one's spiritual life, spiritual progression. When one's too much concerned about what I should do, the same with the ashrams. In Vedic culture, ashram and varna were very carefully, worked out, very carefully planned and arranged. So the living entity that in the human life, we don't have varna and ashram pretty much in animal life, but at least in human life. It is human life. This is actually the basis of religious principles, is a society organized according to varna ashram. And that's varnashram dharma. Dharma, religious practices within the varna ashram, acting according to the direction of the Lord, according to our particular nature. This is a common theme of Bhagavad-Gita. It's so much a theme, but a common statement of Gita. To act according to one's nature under the direction of the personality of God. So we'll be looking a little into that today. But it's hard in Kali Yuga to ascertain it when things are so muddled and there's so much confusion and so much exploitation. Prabhupada talked about the caste system, and Kali Yuga is known as the caste system. The caste system is not necessarily, by definition, a derogatory statement, but it's generally used in that regard. It's the caste system. And the caste system is generally based upon birthright. Although Krishna says here is gunakama vibhagashas, according to one's nature, not according to one's birth. But in modern day society, it's primarily been, if it exists at all, based upon birthright, even though a person may be born in a Brahmana family and they're engaged in Shudra activities, not even following Brahminical principles, they still consider themselves a Brahmin, and they may even be accepted as one, and so on and so forth. And this has resulted in the degradation of the whole society, and in one sense is the most greatest cause of the world's problems, is the failure of those who are in responsible positions in the varnashram to perform their duties according to Krishna's direction. They're acting according to their own direction or someone else, a materialistic direction, but not according to the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or according to their nature. Person in the Ishopanishad, we read that one should act according to one's nature in the Ishavasyan society. That quota which is mentioned there also infers one's position or one's nature acquired. When you all acquire various forms, bodies with various characteristics and various abilities, according to the modes of nature, as a result of our past karmas. And we are generally impelled to act according to those natures. We're not usually in control of things. We may think we are, but we don't see ourselves as apart from this, and therefore we identify with these particular bodily and mental conditions, which are nothing but karmic reactions. But we identify with them so strongly that we're more or less driven by the particular nature we acquired to respond in certain ways, to desire in certain ways, to like and dislike in different ways, to act in different ways and think and so on and so forth. But it's not us. This is just something which we are washing. So whatever situation we're in, whether it's the Varnashram situation, where there is a proper division, according to the Shastras, according to Krishna's direction in the Vedas, and a person's Varna would be carefully ascertained right from the moment, even before their birth. When they're born, astrological tests would be taken as to their nature, and the child would generally be guided accordingly. And then it would be studied as to their propensities as a child, what they're naturally inclined towards, and how they respond to different situations. They would be guided accordingly to become, to be maybe a Kshatriya, but not just a Kshatriya, is Varna Ashram Dharma, and they would be also trained to perform their duty in relationship with the direction of the Vedas, direction of the sadhus, direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it becomes Daivi Varna Ashrama. That was the actual purpose, not just a Varna Ashram, which is a nice system of management maybe, but of no spiritual value. The spiritual value is that the child or the student will be directed and guided in a way to see their responsibility in relationship with the Supreme, as today's verse, Samstithir Haritoshnam, ultimately for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in Kali Yuga, this is all more or less, in most cases, has been lost. And even if there is a remnant of Varna ashram, it is purely a materialistic, self-centered method of arranging society. Of course, from another angle, Varna ashram is there in an undefined state everywhere. Everywhere we find leaders, be they qualified or not. Everywhere we find persons who are somewhat philosophical or intellectual, be they, atheists, be they what they may, but they have a quest for knowledge, a quest for understanding the origins of life, scientists or something. They all have some kind of tendency there for knowledge. Maybe not the other qualities of a Brahmin, but at least that one, something. They're kind of like the intellectuals, the teachers in society, the scientists, those who are searching for the reasons of life and so on. So some kind of Kali Yuga reflection of Brahminical society is there. And then there are the Vaishyas, there's all people around who want to utilize the resources of nature and the people, the simple people around us, for various enterprise, financial enterprises to make some, nowadays it's mostly factories, not so much farming enterprises, but factories and offices and things like that. But they're the organizers. They're not the ones who sit in the office pushing a pen around. They're not the ones that dig the garden. They can do that too, but that's not really a Vaishya. Vaishya is one who organizes these things, organizes the production of society. And then you have another one, which is the vast majority, especially in Kali Yuga, the Shudras, who are basically, they don't really know what they're doing. They're just servant. They just engage. They're engaged by the other groups in various ways, not so much by the Brahmins in Kali Yuga, but more by the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas, those who were taking those posts of Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. They basically engaged the vast majority of people in various acts of production or organization or warfare or whatever it may be. Just do like their foot soldiers or whatever they may be, or people working on the factories, working in fields and things, organized by the Vaishyas or the Kshatriyas. So like that, they're still there, but it's not, it has no meaningful direction. It's just by default that people take various situations, sometimes by economic necessity. They're engaged in activities which are very incompatible to their nature, you could say, or at least to their heart's feelings. So we're in a very difficult age in Kali. So Krishna Varnam Trisha Krishnam Sango Pangasta Pashtam Yogya Sankirtanam Prayajanti Sumedasha. That is recommended in the 12th chapter, I think, Bhagavad-Gita. That one in this, those intelligent persons in the age of Kali, and there aren't that many around, but intelligent persons in the age of Kali worship the personality of Godhead who is accompanied by his associates by the performance of Sankirtan Yogya. Sankirtan. So whatever the situation, without yogya in the Vedic culture, also this is highly emphasized in Bhagavad-Gita in the 3rd chapter and other places in the Gita especially, that one must perform yogya tat kamananta lokayam karma bandhana. Work has to be done, but it should be done as an offering unto Krishna. This makes it a yogya, otherwise it's just work. It may be work which is somewhat pious or not, but a real yogya is that which is done and where the fruits of the work are offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We may not even be aware of that. This is the beauty of the Varnashram system. Everyone is working in a system where the ultimate essential fruits of society are offered as a sacrifice for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the Shudras, even lower than Shudras may get that chance, even the animals. Everyone gets this chance to perform yogya or be engaged in yogya by taking the remnants of yogya, by helping to provide the various needs of a yogya, by assisting in the performance of the yogya, etc., facilitating the yogya. Every order of life can be engaged in that yogya, and if yogya by Vishnu, if that yogya is done for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu, then everyone in the chain gets the benefit. even if all our only business in that chain was to dig a potato out of the ground, and that potato eventually was used in the yajna or whatever, or on the offering for the pleasure of the Lord. Everyone gets a benefit, just like in our Krishna consciousness movement. We sometimes may not think like that, but when a devotee with love and devotion offers something to the Lord, everyone in the chain of that offering gets benefited, maybe to a lesser and lesser degree, but everyone gets some benefit. I guess you offer some cabbage to the Lord, and, the cabbage certainly gets benefited. Its life was taken, now it's being somehow, now of course you could say the soul's not there, but in one sense that the body of that living entity is being offered to the Lord, and those who sold the cabbage or gave the cabbage, those who brought the cabbage, those who cultivated the cabbage, there's a benefit all down the line if it's offered to Krishna. There's a benefit down the line, for instance, with cow's milk. It's a debatable thing, what is actually cow's milk? We're not going there. But if cow's milk, the cows get the benefit from their milk being offered to Krishna. We were at a beautiful farm in England a few days ago. It's in a Himsa farm near Leicester. And there they're producing, proper cheese, proper butter, proper milk, and so on and so forth. And the cows are Himsa, so they're completely protected, and it's not watered down. It's as it is. And the effect, the difference between that type of milk or that type of cheese and the kind of cheese which you buy in the shop, or the milk which we buy in the shop, even the milk we buy from other farms, considerably different. It has such a different effect. It's like eating food. Most people don't know what food tastes like. There's some processed stuff which you get from the farm, or some vegetables which are laden with chemicals, or milk which has been so processed it's almost like water, like drinking white water practically. There's no life left in it. The whey from that milk was just, you don't need milk. It's just so powerful. I'm taking my breakfast cereal with just whey. Whey is usually the stuff you throw away after making paneer. But that whey is so rich, there's butter floating on top of it. It comes from devotional service. The cream of devotional service comes when we apply the principles. So similarly, in farming, when it's done according to the direction of the Vedas, according to the direction of Krishna, the results are phenomenal. The vegetables, the fruits, they're just... Most people don't know what a vegetable tastes like. Some people cook them so much they don't know, and some people spice them so much they don't know. But everybody's eating mostly, unless you're growing your own properly, may not even know what a real potato tastes like, or a cauliflower tastes like, or whatever vegetable or fruit it may be. It nourishes our mind and body. Other fruits cause you to get stuffed of food, tends to stuff us up. We get stuffed. Milk, modern day so-called milk, stuffs you up. But real milk purifies our consciousness and gives us unending life, as well as spiritual brain cells, or brain cells suitable for spiritual life. Milk is the most important food in society, in reality, but we're not getting it. It doesn't come because people's systems have been ruined by processed things. Anyway, that's a sideline of yajna. But we should offer the best of everything to Krishna. This way, Krishna will give the best to us, or to society, and everyone benefits. Everybody watering the root of the tree, all the leaves, however distant they may be, whatever that little twig out there, gets a benefit. This is preaching also. This is the Sankirtan movement. Even if we don't know our position. One day we wake up thinking I'm a Kshatriya. The next day we wake up thinking maybe I'm a Vaishya. The next day we think maybe I'm a Brahmin. The next day I'm just a Shudra, really. Next day we think I'm just a dog. I'm not even in the Varnashram. I'm just a sense gratifying dog. Oh, maybe I should get married. No, maybe I should take sannyas. Maybe I should start brahmachari life again. I think I should leave Vanaprastha in the forest. We're so bewildered. Kali Yuga is such a confusing age. But there's one Eka Mahanguna. And the famous verse, Kaladosha Naderajan, Astyaheka Mahanguna, Kirtana Deva Krishna, Mukta Sangha Paramajat. That Eka Mahanguna, that one good quality in Kali Yuga is Kirtana Deva Krishna. The chanting of the Lord's holy names. It's so simple. So whatever situation we're in, and it's not really, there are things we could talk about, and they should be talked about indeed, especially on local levels. What should we best do with our lives in terms of occupation and ashram? It's a perennial question in Kali Yuga. And you don't usually come to the end of that. Sometimes after practicing Krishna consciousness and purifying oneself a little bit of all of the inebrieties of the effect of Kali Yuga's association, one may come a little bit to understand what is the most favorable activity for oneself in order to both practice Krishna consciousness and inspire others to practice Krishna consciousness. Because naturally, when someone's wrongly situated, it's pretty hard to convince someone else to be rightly situated. If one's not rightly situated, very much so, it is more difficult to be peaceful, that's for sure. Even though we're chanting, we see that so many persons still struggle like anything with their ashram and their varna, etc. Maybe wrongly situated, maybe still effects of the past, karmic reactions, tokens of various kinds. Maybe our sadhana is not so strong. So it does have its value to create a society Prabhupada wanted it, where there's at least protection, where there's at least environmental support for our endeavors to practice Krishna consciousness, and as much as possible, a structure where people can play their part nicely and be more, let's say, at home where they are. More, not say relaxed, not at all, enthusiastic in what they're doing, not just doing it for money, but doing it because they fit the situation like a hand in a glove, as much as possible. But we know how difficult that is. But whatever it is Samsiddhir Hari Toshanam, offering the fruits of our work to the Lord, is the essential line of this verse. That means if we're getting paid, we utilize our income as much as we can in the service of the Lord. If we have some skills, we try to utilize those. The more we do these things selflessly, the more we do these things unconditionally, without any remuneration, etc., but just for the sake of trying to please the Lord, or serve the mission of the Lord, or serve the devotees of the Lord without any expectation. In other words, you give money or donation to the temple or to the devotees, the mission of Krishna consciousness, the publication of literature or something or another. And then one's become very attached to what, I want you to do this, 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 and this with my money. It's not a very advanced stage of devotional offering, maybe preliminary, but without any expectation, without any demand. We give to the right cause, of course. We have to, a little bit of intelligence has to be there. And this way we can make progress, even though we may not be engaged in pure devotional activities. We certainly make progress in devotional service by that act. And in due course of time, of course, the Varnashram system was organized like that during the Grihastha period, during the Ashram period, where we're very much engaged in maybe economic development, family development, and so on. Inevitably, there's a certain element of entanglement, a certain element of attachment, and so on, which ultimately, in Vedic society, we get released from, those who are eligible. Generally, the Shudras are not eligible to do that yet, but those who are, would retire from that situation and concentrate themselves exclusively on spiritual cultivation, detachment from the world, and attachment to Krishna consciousness. In Kali Yuga, or at least in the situation we're in, that isn't so viable for most people. So we practice it at home. Many of you online today are in your 70s, and you've retired from your work and your families to some extent. Not entirely, of course not, but to some extent. At least we have more time where we're trying to dedicate ourselves hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, maybe preaching, doing various deity worship services, etc., etc. Maybe services in a temple if you're fortunate to be near one, and so on and so forth, according to our health and capacity. So that's a nice stage of life, husband and wife together, if possible. Engage in that fully engage whatever time they have, that is, in devotional service practices without becoming ambitious for further material entanglements. And some rare cases, of course, the husband, the man, may accept the order of sannyas exclusively for preaching Krishna consciousness wherever they can. So there's something is there in Kali Yuga and something is there in our situation, but the primary thing which is there is the chanting and hearing of the holy name and hearing Bhagavatam and so on, and devotional service in its various forms. Everyone is eligible for this, everyone, no matter how fallen we are. Everyone is eligible to perform devotional service. It's just a matter of, you could say good fortune, but it comes back to our own will also. Whether we want to or not is our choice. By good association, that choice may become, you could say, furthered. It may become develops in a favorable way. Without the association, it may not develop in a favorable way because we tend to use our own conditional perspective to decide, in a sense, which service to do and how to do it. We do need some guidance on that. That's for sure. We may not know what pleases Krishna. As the essence is to please Krishna, how do I know what pleases Krishna? I don't know Krishna. We have to hear from someone who knows, or we have to hear the words of scripture. But even then, we may not know, like in Bhagavad-Gita, where I'm at, and which instructions are relevant now in my life. So now we're going to go on with the Bhagavad-Gita a little bit in that regards, and we're going to go back to the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. So I don't know if we can follow this. Here we are. I'm going to go to the verse I briefly inferred earlier on, text number 9 of the 3rd chapter. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Causes bondage. You may be very nice in the eyes of the public. You may be doing what we call welfare work, philanthropic work. You may be doing whatever it is, scientific research. You may be doing charity, but it's binding us in this material world. You may be working in what you think is a nice occupation, but it binds us unless it is done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. Now, what is a prescribed duty in Kali Yuga is practically hardly there. But even in traditional terms, this was emphasized for his satisfaction, as today's verse in the Bhagavatam says the same thing. And in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. So we can see how important it is that we try to understand how we can do whatever we're doing in life, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, working, or whatever it is, to try to do that in this way, as for the Lord's satisfaction. Otherwise, we can get bound up, entangled in the material world. We have to take birth again. So learning the process of doing everything for the pleasure of the Lord. And that's why the scriptures are there and why they have to be sustained, maintained as they are, and not meddled with, not changed according to our perspective. This is one of the big, let's say, unfortunate shortcomings in our society, that we tend to change it according to our own perspective. No, I mean, what we do may be slightly changed, but not the principle of performing yajna. That is given by Krishna. Dharmam tu shakshat bhagavat panitam. These principles come from Krishna, and they should not be changed. Only the details may be changed according to type and circumstance. And even that, it is generally the acharyas who are in the situation to ascertain necessary adjustments according to time and circumstance. We're going to go on. And then, of course, this section deals with sacrifice, not just performance of prescribed duties, but without performing one's prescribed duties, is understood in Vedic society that you can't really perform a proper sacrifice. Therefore, in Kali Yuga, these Vedic sacrifices are not possible because practically nobody is properly situated in their prescribed duties or their ashram or varna. So it's very difficult to perform a Vedic sacrifice unless we're properly situated. It's based upon the varna ashram being properly situated. So then again, Yoga Sankirtanam prayer. In Kali Yuga, the only sacrifice which is effective is the Sankirtan Yajna. Others may be there for various supportive reasons, but they're not there for effective reasons. In terms of performing big yagas with hundreds of thousands of fires burning and people svahaing like anything, but the quality is not there. The eligibility is not there. Oftentimes the priest is not qualified. The mantras are not properly chanted. The paraphernalia is all wrong, and the participants are not participating at all for the right reasons or in the right consciousness. And everything's not correct. Therefore, even Shukracharya says, Mantatas tantatas chidum deha kala vastutaha. Everything is wrong. It doesn't matter. Everything's wrong. As long as Anusankirtanam tava, as long as the chanting of the holy name goes on, everything becomes nischidram. Not an excuse, but a reality. The chanting must go on. No matter what else we do in life, confused we may be or not confused. Qualified or not qualified, whatever it is, the chanting must go on. This is the only qualification, really successful one in Kali Yuga, the only yajna which is effective in Kali Yuga. So Krishna goes on talking to Arjuna. I'm not going to read all the verses here. There's so many which are every verse is relevant. And talking about performance of yajna, how we become free of reactions, free of sinful reactions. Arjuna was really concerned in the first chapter that if I perform my duty as a kshatriya, I will become implicated in sinful reaction. I will be the cause of suffering. I will be the cause of sin, and so on. Thinking himself the doer. Pakrite kriyamani gunai kamani sarvashaha. Fools think themselves the doer of activities, and thus they become implicated. Arjuna was thinking himself the doer of activity, therefore I will not fight because this is going to cause so much suffering to others. Now, normal persons would think, well spoken, Arjuna, bravo. Now, Krishna said, you're a damn fool, Arjuna, you're talking rubbish, basically speaking. Nonsense. You're forgetting the goal of life, Arjuna. You're forgetting who you are. You're forgetting how people can progress spiritually entirely. You're just thinking in terms of sensual reactions, in terms of mundane compassion, in terms of attachment to family, body, and so on. Missing the whole purpose of life. The whole Bhagavad-Gita is to try to help us to become disentangled from this false conception of life. As most people would see, well spoken, Arjuna. Nice. Don't fight. We don't want this. We don't want that. We want that. But what is that peace? There is no peace as long as we have a material body or a material mind. There is no such thing as peace. Peace is only when we actually transcend or rise above these various false identities. Even the Vedas, and Krishna says in the second chapter, the Vedas mainly deal Trigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistrigunya Bhavarjuna. They mainly deal with the three modes of nature. Rise above them, Arjuna. Be transcendental. You may act within those modes, but don't be controlled or identify with them. This is the secret. We have acquired a particular nature. These are gifts of God, we could say, karmic as they may be, but they're gifts of God. We shouldn't deny them. We should utilize them, but utilize them in consciousness of Krishna. Utilize them, understanding that Krishna's energies meant to be used for the pleasure of Krishna. We'll read on. We're going to go on now. Let's see which verse we read. Okay. We're going to read from text 19 of the 3rd chapter. Therefore, Krishna says, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. So this is a nice, simple one. One being attached, without being attached to the fruits of one's activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. It doesn't mean like that necessarily, but it is the method, the path whereby which one conclusively, eventually reaches the supreme. Is a stage, it's necessary stage. And what can we say? I'm sure everyone online is doing what they can. Maybe we can do more. Maybe we can adjust. Maybe we're spending too much on unnecessaries. We could use more in the service of the Lord. I don't know. Right? You have to ask yourself. Maybe we're wasting our time. That's another form of offering our time. Everything belongs to Krishna. And it's not so much we are offering. We're just, the path of coming to our senses is beginning. In the pastime of Bali Maharaj, and when Vamanadev took everything, you could say that he thought was his. Bali Maharaj thought that he was the owner of this, this, and this, and I'm offering everything to you, my Lord, including my head. Vindhyavali, his wife, called him a fool, an agnostic fool. You still haven't learned your lessons, dear Prabhu. You haven't learned your lessons because you're still thinking, I have something to give. Krishna consciousness means we don't have anything to give. We're an instrument just to utilize whatever Krishna's energy in the way he wants it. It doesn't belong to us in the first place. So what do we have to give? What do we have to give? Nothing, except for our conscious heart, loving heart. Because everything belongs to Krishna, your money, your husband, your wife, your house, your pet dog, everything, your car, even your mobile, everything belongs to Krishna. Nothing belongs to us. And it's a matter of Krishna consciousness means to recognize that. Even the abilities we have, the mind which we are so much absorbed in, everything belongs to Krishna. Krishna consciousness is quite simple. It just means to recognize that everything belongs to Krishna, no matter what it is. He's the proprietor of everything. Only then can we have peace. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, Arjuna is told that he should fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. Why? For the interest of Krishna, because Krishna wanted him to fight. To be a good man or a non-violent man is a personal attachment. But to act for the Supreme or on behalf of the Supreme is to act without attachment for the result. Just like we see, of course, this age is mostly, there's not, you could say, justifiable wars, etc. They're all fought for greed. But in normal conditions, even in this day and age, if you're a soldier, you have to perform your duty. It's an interesting one, this one. And if you do it under the direction of the authority, one is not implicated in sinful reactions or acting according to, but people are not engaged in their prescribed duties, and neither is sacrifice being performed. So it's a little different. But in a society where they're following Varnashram, etc., then those who are working under the direction of the authority are not held responsible for whatever karmic reactions may be accrued. They're performing their duty. And this way they're considered free. In this Kali Yuga, we can only say that on the present situation, or what we see when a soldier fights for the country, even though it may not be for the rightful cause, nonetheless, he's rewarded. He's not punished because of killing others. He's rewarded, practically speaking. And if he doesn't perform his duty, runs away, then he's punished. So you can only see that on the surface. Otherwise, everyone's implicated in sinful reactions because everyone's acting in ignorance for the wrong cause, with the wrong motivation. Everything's wrong, practically speaking. The only thing is on the here and now, there may not be that same reaction. But in Vedic society, when a proper situation is working under proper direction, ultimately under the Lord's direction, when it's not implicated, quite contrary to what Arjuna was thinking in the first chapter, Krishna immediately slices his argument to shreds. In the next verse, Krishna says, kings such as Janaka attain perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. So even those who are transcendental, Arjuna, even if you are transcendental, still you should perform your prescribed duty to show others by example. Yad charati shreshtas, the next verse, describes this most important principle. It is a principle for all the acharyas set this principle, those who are preachers, and devotees are also supposed to, aspiring devotees, as much as possible to set this principle also by their work, their words, their everything, their actions, and so on. Prabhupada writes, although one who is situated in Krishna consciousness may not have any interest in the world, he still works to teach the public how to live and how to act. In other words, just like we see with Prithu Maharaj, for instance, who was performing yagyas. He was performing karma-kandiya yagyas. What has he got business performing karma-kandiya yagyas? Was to show others who are attached and do need to do it, how to do it properly, so that they advance in spiritual life and not become entangled in the material world. Perform the yagya properly. Who can do that in Kali Yuga? Only Sankirtan yagya is effective. So therefore, chanting must be performed. In the next verse, that's the verse we just mentioned, Yajadacharti Shreshtas. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. This is a famous verse, Prabhupada quoted many times. Therefore, Prabhupada many times would be emphasizing trying to influence the Shreshta, or the, you say, leaders of society, to begin performing yagya of various kinds, or chanting the holy names, or some form of. We see many people now in England, I see especially, many significant people are supporting Krishna consciousness, knowingly or unknowingly. Just like in Leicester just now, the government gave £800,000 grant for fixing the temple with no conditions. Just do it. Of course, there's reasons behind that, but still, it's a very fortunate thing. They get so much benefit for that. And in schools, they've just given, I think, 20, I don't know, maybe I'm not supposed to say that, but they've been given tens of millions of pounds grant free to build schools where the children are receiving prasadam, they're worshipping Krishna Balaram and Gauri Tai, they're hearing Bhagavad-Gita. They may be on the level of pure devotion, but they're getting so much chance to develop pure devotional service. And the government is helping, supporting. And many people are supporting Arahimsa Farm, famous musicians, famous persons in society. Or Food for All with Parashuram. So many. They're getting good fortune. They're gradually going to become Krishna conscious by assisting in the yagya, and because they have assets and influence, their participation can be, just like George Harrison, very effective. Millions of people heard the holy name. And even yesterday, I mean, mostly we're just doing chant and be happy. Some. And everybody knows all the Beatles, the Beatles. Even yesterday, I met one boy, young boy, he had a Rolling Stones t-shirt on. I said, oh, you're a fan of the Rollings? A fan of the Stones? He said, yeah. I said, did you know that Mick Jagger has a house just near New Mayapur? He has a mansion there. He said, oh, yeah, I heard about that. So then I started talking. And I said, I also listened to the Rolling Stones and this and that. And did you know that Mick Jagger donated the marble for our temple in the Radha Londonishwara temple in 1969? He didn't know that. And in this way, he became more and more interested and took a Bhagavad-Gita. So, somehow or another, these personalities, famous persons, have influenced people's hearts. And in this way, many of them are actually helping to spread Krishna consciousness, directly or indirectly, like that. So they're not setting a particularly major example, but by giving the fruits of their work, they're setting a major example. Some of them were chanting Hare Krishna. Many of them. We go on. O son of Prita, this is text 22. O son of Prita, there is no work prescribed for me within all the 3 planetary systems, nor I am in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything. And yet I am engaged in prescribed duties, just like a devotee. What does a devotee have to gain in this world? There's nothing to gain in this world. We may still be a little attached to gaining something in this world. We may be attached to gaining freedom from reaction. We may be attached to feeling good. We may be attached to getting recognized, name and fame and so on. All these are also anarthas. An actual devotee has no interest in any of these things. You can do what you like with me, my Lord. Whatever you arrange is your doing. I simply serve you in any situation, that's all. You give or not give. You put me in hell or not. Narayana Praksavina Kataschana BBT. Narakeshu. Whether you send me to hell or heaven, I don't care. Simply I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. We may not be on that platform, therefore we're still expecting something in return for our endeavors. We're hoping to get recognized. We're hoping for attention. We're hoping for some fruitive returns, etc. Some relief. And it's not surprising, obviously, in the beginning. Neophytes, they approach the Lord for those reasons. Those who are in distress, those who are searching after some recognition or some returns, etc. Those who are inquisitive, those who are searching after knowledge. We haven't found it yet. We're still on the path, and we're still expecting something on the path, some temporary returns. But a pure devotee doesn't have anything. Doesn't need anything. He's got everything. He's conscious of Krishna. You don't need anything else. Maybe you don't. And Krishna says, in the next verse, is very interesting. For if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. Just the opposite of what Arjuna said. Complete opposite, 180-degree opposite. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Let's see. Even the unwanted population argument has been thrashed here by Krishna. Because what's the use of a population of ignorant people? What's the value of it? It has no value. In fact, it's less minus value. No value. Unless, as Janananda says, of course, we can't force this issue, we only can try our best. And it doesn't always happen, but unless the son becomes a devotee, it's of no real value. There's no value whatsoever as a child. What's the use? Another karmi, another materialistic contamination, another entanglement, another life, birth after birth. What's the use? There's no value. One devotee is unlimitedly valuable because they can change the world. So unwanted population is not just population which is not following the Varnashram system or not protected therein, but a population which is not Krishna conscious. And that, Krishna says, if I don't mind, why? Because people will follow his example. They won't care to perform their prescribed duties, but they won't bother performing sacrifices. And Kali Yuga comes in this way through the pride of the Brahmin. People become proud and envious and so on and so forth. And then the next verse, Krishna says, as the ignorant, this is text 25, as the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act. This is one of my favorite verses on the ground level, you could say. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. kind of a summation of what we've been speaking almost. So as not to disrupt, the next verse continues with the same theme, so as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties. So this is quite far out, because we're talking about here persons who are following prescribed duties. What to speak of those who aren't, who are motivated or forced by circumstances to do some work under the direction of some corrupt Vaishya or something like that, so they can get money to pay their taxes to the corrupt Kshatriyas, etc., so that they can do various materialistic activities to further entangle the people and keep them in ignorance. But where is the question of prescribed duties? They're prescribed by who? By ignorance. But that isn't proper. Prescribed duties are given by the Lord. But people aren't even doing that. But even here, Krishna says so. But they're attached to the fruits. Yes, even in Vedic society, Varnashram, they're attached to their fruits. They also want to have some fruits, some enjoyment of their work. They work for results as well. They're not all that detached or that attached to Krishna necessarily. They're acting in the proper way, but they're still attached to the fruits. So Krishna says here, in order not to disrupt their minds, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Don't condemn their work, even in the name of religiosity, etc. Don't condemn it. It should be encouraged, but it should be encouraged in the right way, so they can gradually advance. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the general or gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Gradual, as Prabhupada writes, gradual development of Krishna consciousness, by engaging them in all sorts of activities. They may carry on with whatever they're doing, or we may carry on with whatever we're doing, but we should be encouraged to engage in various types of activities which are favorable for the gradual development, just like giving a donation. I was surprised day before yesterday, I suppose now, day before yesterday in Lincoln, one of the more, let's say, experienced book distributors was with us, Brahmachari. And I was fascinated how these two ladies came up. One of the first things they said, we're born again Christians. They both walked away with Bhagavad-Gitas, and they gave donations. They were a little eccentric. They weren't perhaps quite normal born again Christians, but they said clearly they're born again Christians. And it was just nice to see. They don't know anything about Krishna consciousness much, but they walked away with Bhagavad-Gitas. Phenomenal. So works of devotion, a very big work. That's quite a phenomenal thing. We had another lady yesterday following us. I thought she was a devotee, but she was actually probably another born-again Christian. She was very enthusiastically saying, Jesus is the way, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus is the way, Jesus is the way. She gets benefited. Don't discourage it. There's no problem. Jesus, Prabhupada said, if you love Jesus, chant Jesus. Good. Starting at least is on the path, just like we're on the path, we're trying to be, by chanting Krishna, Krishna. We're not chanting with love either. We have some faith maybe, or some reason why we're chanting, but it's not necessarily with love. We still have some love for ourselves and love for everything else around us. We're not loving everything around us and loving ourselves necessarily because of its belonging to Krishna. It's not because I like it, I'm attached to it. So, but gradual progress on the path by doing works, activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. And by offering the fruits of our work, however small it may be, it helps us to move forward on our spiritual path. Okay, let's see, we'll move on. Oh, we've got text 29. Let's read text 29. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. So this is clearly, obviously, the nature of majority of people in this world. They're fully attached. They're fully they're under ignorance. They're engaged in all kinds of material activities, and they're very attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Well, that goes back to the previous verse. We don't necessarily unsettle them, telling them their religion is this or that, or their work is this or that, but just try to summon another. I remember one time we were going on Sankirtan in Sydney. We went down the subway, not the train subway, but under the road. subway under the major road, and there was like a little shopping area down there, and we were chanting through there, and a loud call came out of a butcher's shop. Harry Bo! This butcher shouted, Harry Bo. He's a butcher, but he chanted Harry Bo. So we go over and talk to him, and yes, I like Hare Krishna. I went to the temple. We're not going to tell him to give up his butcher. We're just going to ask, at this point of his life, just then keep chanting. Take a book, take some prasadam. Give them some way where they can naturally, because you can't just take things away. You've got to have something better. That's one of the primary verses of the second chapter instruction of Krishna's. To let go of these lower things, you have to have a better thing. You're not going to do much good just taking away the lower things. Give something better. Otherwise, what chance have they got? So you fortunate butcher. Therefore, O Arjuna, next verse, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desire for profit, with no claim of proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. One word, fight. I didn't beat around the bush there. Just fight. Yudhyasva, fight. Sounds so simple. Doesn't sound very spiritual. Doesn't sound like yoga. Doesn't sound like, sadhu. But it is, because yoga means to link with Krishna. Spiritual means that which pleases Krishna. Sadhu means one who does what Krishna wants. Not the way we dress, not the way, even the way we talk may not be indicative. It's the consciousness in which we are acting. So Krishna is saying, whatever your condition may be, whatever your duty may be, you follow this principle. Perform your duty in this state of consciousness, surrendering your works to me, full knowledge of me, without desire for profit, with no claim of proprietorship, free from lethargy, fight. So even if we are in the mode of passion, predominantly, we learn how to utilize that. It's not we, the soul. You could say we're in the association of the mode of passion. We utilize that situation for the pleasure of Krishna. But we have to find out how we can utilize it properly for his pleasure. Not just, I'm in the mode of passion, therefore I'm just punching. I can't help it. I just punch everyone. If we're going to punch everyone, we have to learn how to punch properly in a way which is favorable to the development of Krishna consciousness. Next verse. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunction and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive action. Executing our duties according to Krishna's injunction, following faithfully without envy of others. Now, an interesting factor, which I'm sure we've all experienced, when you're more happily situated in what you're doing, whatever it is, you don't feel envy for others in what they're doing, even if they're doing something more significant, relatively speaking. You're satisfied. Spiritual world's like that too. It's not like, the leaves are thinking, oh my God, how did I end up like a leaf in Goloka Vrindavan? Look at those cows. They're having in fact, they're even eating me. They're having such fun. And here I am stuck on a tree as a leaf. Oh, not only that, but I heard this is eternal. What a form to have. Or the cows are thinking, oh, why am I just an animal? Oh, I could have been a gopa. Oh, they're getting so much more fun playing with Krishna than I am. Or the gopas are thinking, oh my goodness, we're not getting anywhere near the confidentiality that Mother Yasoda is getting with Krishna. She's able to feed Krishna with her breast milk. Oh my goodness, look at us. We're, okay, we're giving him a laddu, but it's not the same. Or Mother Yasoda, who doesn't get that intimacy of the gopis. They're not thinking like that. They're completely, because they're acting according to their actual heart's nature. They're completely satisfied. And they're happy to see others bringing satisfaction to Krishna in maybe even better ways than we are. But they're satisfied in themselves. It's devotional service. Doesn't matter whether we're washing the pots or cleaning the loo. We don't have to be sitting up on a pedestal with hundreds of people sitting around gawking at us. and, whatever. Don't have to be there. It's just that connection with Krishna, just living one's life for the pleasure of the Lord, no matter what service it is. And Krishna goes on, even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. We do, even those who are advanced devotees, they have their particular natures, accrued nature. They act accordingly, but they do it purely for Krishna's pleasure. For everyone follows his nature he is acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? Next verse, text 34. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. There are principles to regulate. Vedic society would not stop necessarily, but regulate. So the next stage, after the first stage of some kind of connection, maybe offering some fruits, is now to regulate whatever is there, positive, negative, but regulation, reduction, just like we see in most cultures, in the Christian culture right now. I think it's still Ramadan in the Muslim faith. I think so. It's to regulate. It has its value. Maybe it could be discussed in other ways, but it's meant to have its value to help regulate, control the senses. Gradually, by regulation, one gradually becomes detached from that which is unfavorable in the ultimate picture. But regulation in the beginning, just like if you're ever worked in a drug rehabilitation center, there will be a gradual regulation to bring the addict off of drugs, not all of a sudden usually, but slowly reducing the amount, weaning them off of their addiction. So similarly, addicted, those pretty much everyone, addicted to sense gratification, regulate that sense gratification. Don't just give it up immediately. Very few can do that, but regulate it slowly, regulate according to the Shastric directions or the directions of one's authority. One gradually regulates, and reduces. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Even this desire, thought, I hate it, I'm just going to get out there. No, that also doesn't work. Or I just love it. No, neither attachment nor aversion. Ragadvesh should be muktas too. Freed of attachment and aversion, we can become attached to step by step offering our lives to Krishna, our fruits of our work, etc. Offering that to Krishna. And then offering one's very life to Krishna, one's consciousness, etc. And 35, the last verse in this chapter, which I'm going to read, it is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, rather than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous, risky. What is our path? That's our path, of course, is trying to apply Krishna consciousness in our lives, no matter what else we're doing, because it's not likely to be ideal according to Varnashram. Not usually. So we try to do as much as we can, offering the fruits of our work, offering our services whenever we can, and trying to be as conscious as we can. We're going to jump forward now on that point of being as conscious as we can to the 18th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. Having described the 4 ashrams in the 18th chapter, Brahmins, Kshatras, Vaishyas, and Shudras, they're distinguished, Krishna says, by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes. Clearly, Krishna says here they're not born from the material body, which we have in the sense that they are, but not from the family lineage. They're born according to our nature, which we've acquired. One understands one's position in society according to a particular nature. So, for instance, the nature of a Brahmin. The nature of Brahmin is not one who waves a fan, throws water here and there, and mumbles some mantras and does a yajna, fire yajna, gets donations. That's not the nature of a Brahmin. Well, the nature of Brahmin, the quality of a Brahmin is peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities of the Brahmins. So one would expect to see these qualities if someone's a Brahmin. In this age and this situation, even in ISKCON, Prabhupada awarded Brahmin initiation to most of his initiated devotees after a certain period of time, even if there was, you could say, not such a strong manifestation of these qualities. There should be some, but primarily to further the preaching of Krishna consciousness. Same with sannyas. Everything is with that in mind. That which is favorable for becoming Krishna conscious and spreading Krishna consciousness. Next verse. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyism. So who is a Kshatriya? Heroic, powerful, determined, resourceful, courage in battle, generous, leadership. Very, very rarely find that a person with these qualities now. They generally don't even go on the battlefield, the actual Kshatriyas or leaders of society. They should be the first on the battlefield if they declare war with somebody. They should be the first one out on the field, leading the charge, so to speak. But generally, that's not the case. So they're not really Kshatriyas. And then farming, cow protection, and business are the natural work for the Vaishyas. See how with the Brahmins is the quality of work or the consciousness which we work. The Kshatriyas is a mixture of the two. And the Vaishyas is purely work, passion, pure passion. With ignorance, passion and ignorance for the Vaishyas actually. And there's no mention of their consciousness particularly. And for the Shudras, there are labor and service to others. Simply follow what one's done. But they're happy also because they're properly protected, properly provided with love and care by the Vaishyas, the Kshatriyas, and so on. Respected like that. By following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now, please hear from me how this can be done. So Prabhupada Krishna goes on to say that a man can attain perfection through performing his own work, by worshipping the Lord at the same time. Better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. That will be a topic of conversation, I would imagine. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. A few more verses then follow up. I'm going to bounce forward a little bit here to text number 56. This 18th chapter, text 56. Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee under my protection reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace. Prabhupada writes in the purport here, how a devotee is 24 hours engaged, 10% in devotional service. To a devotee who is thus engaged in Krishna consciousness, the Lord is very, very kind. In spite of all difficulties, he is eventually placed in the transcendental abode or Krishna conscious or transcendental abode. Transcendental abode. I missed a line, I think. Eventually placed in or Krishna conscious or Krishna Loka. He's guaranteed entrance there. There is no doubt about it. In that supreme abode, there is no change. Everything is eternal, imperishable, full of knowledge. Then Krishna says, In all your activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. If you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will have to be engaged in warfare. Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction, but compelled by the work born of your own nature, you will act all the same as the son of Kunti. Hare Krishna. We shall finish there. Krishna's giving so many wonderful, let's say, guidelines to us all, how we can come to the conclusion of the Bhagavad-Gita. Hare Krishna. So if anyone would like to ask any questions, you're most welcome. Oh, by the way, a quick point. You can type your questions in while I'm mentioning some one or two things. His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj has had an operation yesterday, I think. And there's some complications. And right now they're trying to sort the complications out. So his health condition is quite fragile right now. And some of you may know about His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj. We'd appreciate everyone's please to keep him in your thoughts, and if you can, say some prayers for his protection also. It's not that it makes a difference to him. He's trying, in a sense, he's transcendentally situated, he's absorbed in devotional service, but to us, we very much need the association of such great souls to help to awaken Krishna consciousness today in this world. So if anyone has any questions, I know what I would ask, but I'm not going to ask it. It's up to you. Okay, something popped up on the screen. Let's see what we've got. Thank you, Jason. I don't know if you went to New Mayapur. Did you make it? Didn't make it. Oh, maybe we have to get together sometime later in the year. So many questions. Exactly. That would be one of my questions. How to balance many tasks. Whew. It's life seems to be in Kali Yuga particularly. That balancing effect, read this, chant this, do this, give this, go here, listen to this. Never ends. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And there's not necessarily a black and white answer to that. It's something which you can take personal, according to each and every individual, take some personal guidance. And some things we just have to realize as we go through our lives. But whatever we do, the main thing is to keep chanting. We may make mistakes. Every endeavor is covered by fault, as we've just heard. We may make mistakes, naturally, but just keep chanting Hare Krishna. Turn to the Bhagavad-Gita. Whether we made a mistake or not, open the Bhagavad-Gita, just read from Bhagavad-Gita and chant Hare Krishna and carry on. We can't necessarily say, and pray. You can pray to Krishna for guidance. Pray to Krishna for guidance. Prabhupada has given us certain parameters, of course, for the execution of devotional service, but to the extent you read, to the extent you chant, when you chant, where you chant, how you chant, what you read, where you go, and we certainly do. It's good to have some kind of mentorship. You can't expect absolute perfection there, but mentorship to help guide us and to help to, give a little confidence in what we're doing. Sampradaya directions there coming down to give us a little guidance in life, but this is Kali Yuga, and it's not so clean cut as it was in previous ages. It is very cloudy. So how to see in the clouds? Well, taking that advice from those who are more advanced or those who have more experience, not necessarily advanced even, but more experience in certain areas too. Family life and occupational activities, devotees who have, you could say this is a good one. If you can discuss this with persons, for instance, in a similar situation where you're working, you're living in an apartment somewhere, you have to interact with various social commitments and so on. But we take advice or it takes courage, take guidance from those who maybe a little more advanced in themselves who are in a similar position that we are in, to how they balance their life, and they may be able to give us some advice. Everyone's different, so you can't say exactly that would be the same in every case, but to some extent you can get some strength, some inspiration in that way. But a very personal thing, how to balance one's day, one's tasks. You've got a baby who's been screaming all night long. They tell you got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and chant all your rounds before you go to work. May not work for such a person, such a devotee. You have a couple of hours sleep at night, and we've got to start work at 2 o'clock in the morning on a shift system. It's so imbalanced this age of Kali already. How to balance? Just keep trying to chant Hare Krishna and pray to the Lord for strength and guidance, and take whatever you can from others who have more experience. We try to adjust our lives as much as we can to be regulated, as much as we can, regulation. And as much as we can, as Krishna said early on, regulation, and it's very hard to control, but by regulation and detachment it's possible. So as much as possible, avoid things which will further implicate or further irritate our minds. Like, unnecessary. There's times you may have to, but unnecessarily, for instance, watching television. You may need to watch for certain news or reasons, some program or some, I don't know, but unnecessarily should be avoided. Unnecessary things which are not really necessary, because they will further irritate on the mobile or the computer, whatever it may be. Try to minimize that, a little bit of detachment. Try to minimize one's association. When I say minimize, it doesn't mean we can necessarily say no to it, but minimize one's association with materialistic personalities, other than to try to preach to them, or you have to work with them, or socially you have to interact with them, but minimize it. Don't get too entangled. Eat nicely. Eat the proper food. Make sure we offer our food to Krishna. At least that much we should do. That will help. And try to chant as much as we can, and read as much as we can Prabhupada's books. This may help us a little bit to get a little bit clearer on what our priorities are. Health is a priority. You have to maintain your body and soul, financially, family, and so on. But aside from that, our chanting and hearing is a priority. So try to put aside as much time as we can to chant and hear about Krishna. Next one. So let's see if we bounce forward 2 or 3 spots there. In Bhagavad-Gita, it's said that everyone is working according to his nature. What about pure devotees who are not under the influence of nature? Well, Krishna did mention that, but there are 2 svadharmas, or prescribed duties. One, according to the nature of this material world, and that's generally related to the varnashram. The other is according to one's mission in life. Pure devotees of the Lord may be both, or they may be acting according to they're always acting, certainly, for sure, according to their mission, according to the will of the Lord. So they'll do anything for the will. Sometimes pure devotees even take demoniac positions for the will of the Lord to perform a particular activity or show a particular lesson. Their primary thing is they are acting directly under the will of the Lord. Others in society are indirectly, you could say, acting by following scriptural injunctions to regulate themselves or perform their activities according to Varna Ashram if they can, or to perform various yagyas, etc., according to Vedas, according to Krishna. So in that case, they must perform their prescribed duties. The pure devotees who are not dependent on that, as we heard from Krishna earlier on, they're not dependent on those activities to progress. They've already reached the goal. They've reached the conclusion. But they may perform those prescribed duties in order to show others They may even perform prescribed duties, which in a sense they have their nature. In a sense, they're not. That's just a temporary thing, but they may not even act according to their nature. They may do also. They're not obligated. They will do whatever's necessary for helping others to progress in spiritual life. And to try, that's why Prabhupada was so, practically speaking, showing us how to do everything. He would do everything, not just, some people say, oh, he's a Vaishya, but okay, Prabhupada showed us how to look after money and how to organize things. But he was also clearly a leader. He was a Kshatriya sometimes, very much so. And he was definitely a Brahmin, that's for sure. Never a Shudra, you could say. But there's still, Prabhupada would be cleaning. He would even clean up after devotees in the beginning days had eaten. Prabhupada would clean their plates and clean the floor and clean this and clean the toilet and everything, if necessary. Not that it's not so much the work that we're doing, but the consciousness which they work in. Whatever is necessary to help others to become Krishna conscious. So the two Swadharma, our Swadharma right now is coming through those great devotees and coming through the Shastras and coming through the performance of our duties and various sort of things like that. Whereas they're directly in contact with the Lord, guiding them as to what to do. Krishna's also doing that with the conditioned souls, Ishvaram Sarvabhutan Videsha Arjuna Tishtati, but the conditioned souls are being guided exactly according to their will and karma. It's not like a loving exchange going on there. Not at all. Totally unconscious of it. We think we're free will, but it's not. We're being dragged around by our mind and body. The pure devotee is not like that. So he just may engage in various prescribed duties, maybe according to his you say, the nature of his psychophysical condition, and may not. He has more free will there. The next one. There's a reference given of Daivavan. I mentioned Daivi Varnashram Dharma. Varnashram Dharma. Okay, well, Daivi is transcendental, and Varnashram Dharma is properly executed as a means to transcendence. So in our Krishna consciousness movement, Prabhupada wanted Varnashram Dharma. We wanted Daivi Varnashram, not just a system of society for gradual progress. That will be there for the population in general. But amongst the devotees, it was a different thing. And Prabhupada also indicated that, we need it too, because we're not so transcendental. But it's purely and wholly related to pure devotional service. It's not just a system according to our attachments, be it connected through the Vedic system or through proper performance of one's prescribed duties, etc. But in Krishna, in this movement, Daivi Varnashram means that we have our shortcomings, we have our particular abilities, etc., etc. We don't need to imitate someone else, but every single devotee, and we were Shudra nature or not, or whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. But every single devotee is chanting Hare Krishna. Every single devotee is worshipping Krishna. Every single devotee is serving Krishna. That may not be the case, and indirectly, yes, but in the Varnashram Dharma, that's not the case. They may do all kinds of other things. Daivi Varnashrama, everyone is serving Krishna. And it's two things there, not just the one. Everyone is engaged in devotion and cultivating pure devotion. Everyone. And it ultimately helps to pick everybody else up, to pick everyone else up. And if the leadership of society is genuinely Krishna conscious, then even if others are not in that system, where the whole aim, goal, direction is pure devotional service, and the leaders are pure devotees, then this can have a tremendous effect on picking everyone up. They can establish step by step, as people are eligible, step by step, pure devotional service will start to manifest in people's hearts. Hare Krishna, certainly, thank you. Hare Bol. Thank you, Sampada. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Jason. Hare Krishna. We heard in Kali Yuga, inclination is towards Shudra and Grihastha. So why focus in Varnashram and not direct devotional service. Well, we do more focus on direct devotional service. Lord Chaitanya didn't focus on Varnashram. He didn't reject it, but he didn't focus on it. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj did, for various reasons, partly because in India, people have this concept of the caste system. So he wanted to show it in a more, let's say, proper way. Prabhupada also took up this Varnashram in a much more developed way, you could say, even, although he didn't institute it very systematically, if at all, practically, but he did emphasize the importance of it. He mentioned in one case when Hari Sori Prabhu asked him, Lord Chaitanya said, Kali Yuga, this Varnashram is not there, it is chant Hare Krishna. And Prabhu said, if you can just chant Hare Krishna, then you don't need it. But you can't just chant Hare Krishna, you're still entangled in this world. So he said, for our own, and someone said, well, is that for the public? Prabhu said, no, it's for you. He said, for our own devotees. Now, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be, as clean cut as previous ages, that's for sure. But, people now, especially nowadays, we see that lifestyle, environmental situations, healthy living, peace, all these things are kind of quite sought after, or at least discussed by a certain sector of society, usually more we can say those who are tinged a little bit more by the mode of goodness. So for such people, lifestyle is very, very, very important thing to see. And I say it won't be perfect, but this is an important thing to capture people. Society is in such a mess. We see, vote for this one. Vote. What difference does it make? It doesn't. They don't know. The parades, protests, voting, it's all the same, practically speaking. There's no direction in society. And they're really not looking. They're looking for some direction from externals, from society. So Prabhupada was hopeful that if we had actually progressed, one of the reasons it hasn't developed very much up to now, a little bit, but not much, is that the maturity has to be there. When the head is very mature, it's a lot easier to guide the body to follow in this case, the system of Varnashram. Everything's already there. Prabhupada said in 67, 68, actually, we just have to become Krishna conscious. So as we become, if we become more and more Krishna conscious, then this, and Prabhupada gave that directives, we must establish it, we have to have a Varnashram college, etc. But all this will become manifested as we become more and more pure in life, because it is a very practical tool, a practical method, a practical aspect of facilitating Krishna consciousness in so many ways. So when the time, just like Srila Prabhupada, he 43 years after he had the instruction to preach in the Western world, he came. He was asked why he didn't come early. He said, you weren't ready earlier. So when the time is right, it'll happen. It's gonna, we can make all of our endeavors. In some places we see in India, Indonesia, it's happening. A peaceful, more peaceful environment. We're looking after nature, looking after the cows, living with Krishna in the center of one's life. Very peaceful mode of goodness, favorable for the execution of pure devotional service. We started with a line of, more healthy food, etc., etc. So it's along the same line too. More healthy mind, more healthy interaction between devotees, freedom from envy, and so on. Freeing oneself from artificial ambitions and so on. Desire for name, fame, respect, and so on. We should be more peaceful. And a nice example for the preaching point of view. Okay, that appears to be it. I'd like to thank you all very, very much. And I think that's it, isn't it, Rastikananda? Have we covered it all? Yeah, okay. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And we wish you all the very best in your spiritual lives. We hope that one day we'll be able to physically meet again. Some of you we do see, but most of you are at a far distance physically. But I'm sure it will come. Oh, Hare Krishna. Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Brihat Maranga ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol, everybody. We'll keep you in touch if we have another Zoom class coming up soon. We have one on Tuesday morning. Vasikananda Prabhu is for the Russia Yatra, but you might be able to tune in if you're free Tuesday morning. Hare Krishna, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Haribo! Haribo! Haribo!
Haribo.
Haribo!
Haribo, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
All glories, all
Haribo!
glories, Maharaj, all glories.
Hari.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Maharaj.